Okay, let's talk about the underlying causes of this spat with the United States. The Trump administration accuses Russia of selling oil to countries like India and China as well, using these dark fleets, and that money is funding Russia's war effort in Ukraine. I want to ask you, is that happening? And is, in your opinion, Washington justifiably irritated that that's happening?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it is happening. The 50% tariffs kicked in on the 27th, just after midnight, or the 26th night of August in American time. So we've actually been under those sanctions for 5 or 6 days already. But I do want to say that it's completely unjustified for multiple reasons. Number one is, of course, that who you trade with is a sovereign decision of any nation. No one in America would allow anybody to presume to tell them whom they can and cannot trade with. And the only constraint that India or any other sovereign nation has historically been willing to observe is of the UN Security Council sanctions a particular country. Then it's where all as UN members expected to go along with that, but there is no UN sanction on Russia. Secondly, there is the fact that the EU is actually purchasing far more from Russia. In other words, they're sending more dollars to Russia than India is. We spend about $53 billion on Russia, basically oil and gas. The EU spends $67 to $68 billion every year. I'm talking of last year's figures, on a whole variety of other items that they buy from Russia. Thirdly, China buys far more oil and gas than we do. But America can't dare to sanction China with an extra 25% because they know that the Chinese can withhold rare earth magnets and other vital materials and God knows what else that the American economy needs. And so the problem with India is that India essentially is unable to conduct any reprisals against this punitive or vindictive action by America, because the only way we can do so would be to hurt our own producers, who are already hurting in terms of those items that the Americans have sanctioned. Because there are a couple of items that we are selling the Americans that have not yet had a tariff slapped on them. One is pharmaceuticals. We are the world's leading supplier of pharmaceuticals, even more than China. And so the average American going to his pharmacy for his headache remedy may have a bigger headache if the prices go up. And so they've been hesitating to sanction or tariff Indian pharmaceuticals so far anyway. And the other one is the electronics. We manufacture 60% of the Apple iPhones sold in America. 60% of the Apple iPhone 17 was slated to be shipped from here. And that's going to be something which I think would complicate relations not only with the American consumer, but also with this major American company. So they're going to still work that out. But those two things are still not tariffed. Everything else, all our leather goods, our textiles and garments, our seafood exports, shrimp and so on, and our gems and jewelry, where India was a world leader in terms of affordable gems and jewelry, diamond cutting and polishing, jewelry design, all of that. All of those have already taken a very bad hit from the initial 20%, 25%, and now the additional 25% sanctions. So that's 50% already. There's stories of 150,000 Indian gem and jewelry workers being laid off in Mr. Modi's home state of Gujarat. So it really does hurt. Real people are losing real jobs because of the temper tantrum from Washington.
Okay, I mean you've described the sanctions as stinging sanctions, and you paint a picture there of a situation in which livelihoods are being severely affected by decisions being taken in Washington and by the Indian government. I mean, what does the Indian public make of all of this? Do you get the impression there's growing anger? Is that a risk?
Oh, yeah, no, there's very serious anger because the Indian public, don't forget, after 200 years of colonialism, Tom, we are not prepared to be dictated to by any foreign power. It's just, it is our strategic autonomy has been a fundamental tenet of our foreign policy under all governments. And we've had various parties in office at various times. No one has moved under, no one has buckled under. Strategic dignity matters to us. We are consistently championing a rules-based international order, unilaterally imposing tariffs, especially telling you who you can and cannot buy oil or anything from, flies in the face of our principles. We will not surrender our right to conduct our foreign policy based on our national interests. So I think you will see from India, with massive popular support, strategic resolve and diplomatic firmness. I mean, we value our partnership with the US, but our foreign policy choices are non-negotiable and can be dictated solely by our national interests. I think we'll continue negotiating with the Americans in trade negotiations if they're willing to talk. They actually suspended the last round on the 25th of August, where an American trade delegation was due in Delhi to continue trade talks, and they decided not to come. So if they don't want to talk, then they can't be a negotiation. But otherwise, we will be happy to negotiate with them, but we won't compromise on some issues that matter to us. For example, in a democracy like India, anything that is seen as harming the interests of our 700 million farmers or 700 million people living off agriculture is simply a non-starter for any elected government.
Okay.
The farmers represent an extremely powerful voting bloc in the country and across the country. So we will not grant market access to much of our agricultural sectors, and the Americans better understand that if the price of that is they're going to give us some unreasonable tariffs, well, then they'll simply end up losing our products. It's as simple as that. There's also been pressure on data localization. We're not convinced we need to do that. So there's some issues. I think there are other things we could have negotiated. Americans want to sell us Cadillacs, luxury automobiles. I suspect that we're willing to give a little bit on that because it's a very small market for that kind of car, and it won't be upsetting the entire sort of Indian marketplace. I think we can be a little more accommodating of some of the American export interests. Maybe Indians who are notoriously fond of Scotch whiskey might develop a taste for bourbon if we can work out a deal with America on that. So there are that kind of negotiation is always possible. But I must tell you that it's got to be a negotiation. It can't be a unilateral diktat. We know the US is a crucial market, but we're going to be redoubling our efforts to strengthen our trade ties with other significant economies. The EU, we're already negotiating an FTA with the EU. The UK, we've got an FTA concluded last month. Japan, ASEAN, partners in the global south, including Africa. I think we are going to be diversifying a lot more to reduce our over-reliance on any single market and to build resilience against the unpredictable unilateral actions, that kind of thing coming again from Washington. And we also have to do something about our domestic competitiveness and strengthening. I think we need to focus on improving our internal practices, our logistics, the cost of doing business, the ease of doing business, the productivity of our labor force. There are things we can do to get our act together a little better at home. We can't just compete purely on low wages. We need to invest on skills, on technology, on infrastructure. We got to make our products globally competitive, even in the face of whatever tariffs we finally end up with, which I hope certainly will not be anything like 50, well, should ideally be around or lower than 20. Then we will be able to compete with other Asian countries and other countries generally that are also being tariffed at between 15 and 19% these days by the Americans. That could be fine. And we can also do a strategic review of our own tariff structures to ensure that they're actually serving our economic goals. Mr. Trump keeps complaining that our tariffs are too high. Our average tariffs in America are just 17%. So American tariffs are actually higher on Indian goods and Indian tariffs are on American goods. But we can still look at that. We can see where we can ease things, as I said, on a sector by sector, item by item basis. Let's see.
Okay.
My own gut feeling about all of this is these actions by President Trump are testing our resolve, testing our proud history of strategic independence, and we're not going to capitulate. We will have to seriously consider how best we respond. And my gut feeling on all of this is we will be able to, but we're not going to sacrifice our strategic autonomy even for short-term economic relief. That would be a betrayal of what every Indian would agree is our national interest. We'll have to stand firm, we'll have to negotiate hard, we'll have to diversify strategically, and we'll have to emerge from all of the Trumpian tariffs as an even stronger and more self-reliant nation. That would be my message, Tom.